I breathe in the familiar scent of chocolate and vanilla as I slide another cake into the industrial oven. Even after 15 years, the aroma takes me back to Grandma Rose's kitchen, her weathered hands guiding mine as we measured and mixed. The secret, she'd always say, isn't just in the ingredients. It's in knowing which one to hold back. The kitchen of Thompson's Catering hums with morning activity. My staff moves around me with practiced efficiency, but this cake? This one I always make myself. Some things you don't delegate. "Blair, honey?" David appears in the doorway, impeccable in his business suit. The Jenkins wedding coordinator called. They want to increase the guest count by 50. "More cake?" I wipe my hands on my apron, leaving traces of cocoa powder. "Your famous cake," he grins. "Mrs. Jenkins specifically said her daughter chose us because she had the cake at the Morrison wedding last month. Said she's been dreaming about it ever since." I feel the familiar warmth of pride. Grandma Rose's legacy, touching another generation. "Remember when we started?" I ask, checking the cake's progress through the oven window. "That tiny kitchen in our apartment? Me baking all night while you made sales calls during the day. Best decision we ever made." David comes behind me, wraps his arms around my waist. "Taking a chance on your grandmother's recipes." I lean back against him, remembering. She'd be proud, wouldn't she? Her recipes making people happy at their most special moments. "Speaking of which," he kisses my temple. "I have meetings all afternoon about the expansion. Lots of interest in taking Thompson's national." The thought both thrills and terrifies me. You really think people outside of Boston are ready for Grandma Rose's cake? Are you kidding? This cake is our golden ticket, Claire. Your grandmother knew what she was doing when she only passed these recipes to you. I smiled, remembering the day she gave me her recipe book, her arthritic hands pressing it into mine. "Promise me," she'd said, "you'll keep our secrets in the family." "Well, you are family," I tell David now, turning to dust flour from his suit jacket. "The only one besides me who knows all the ingredients." "Lucky man," he grins, checking his watch. "Gotta run. Big meeting with some investors. You've got the Murphy tasting at 2? I nod, already turning back to my workspace, my mind on the numerous tasks to complete before the Murphys come in. "Don't forget dinner tonight," I remind him. "I'm trying out a new variation on the recipe." "Wouldn't miss it," he calls over his shoulder, already on his phone as he heads out. I watch him go, grateful as always that he handles the business side while I create. The kitchen timer chimes and I turn back to my cakes, adding the secret ingredient to my next batch, the one component that makes everything work, the one thing Grandma Rose taught me to always keep to myself. The kitchen is warm, the air is sweet, and I'm living my grandmother's dream. Our small business is growing, our reputation spreading, all because of a recipe passed down through generations, protected by love and trust. "Package for Mr. Thompson," the courier announces, holding out a thick manila envelope sealed with red, confidential stamps across its surface. "I'll take it," I say, wiping flour from my hands. It's odd, David's business mail usually goes to our home or his office, not the kitchen. The return address catches my eye. Horizon Foods Corporation, Legal Department. "Probably another buyout offer," I mutter, tossing the envelope onto my desk in the corner office. We get them all the time, big companies wanting to acquire our recipes. David always handles them with a polite no. The morning rushes by in a blur of cake batters and wedding consultations. I'm deep in concentration, adding the secret ingredient to a fresh batch, when I hear Sarah's cry of dismay. "No, Mrs. Thompson, I'm so sorry." I turn to see Sarah frantically dabbing at the envelope with a kitchen towel. A gallon of milk has upended across my desk, soaking everything in its path. "The letter," Sarah says, horrified. "It's getting wet." Thank you," I say, rushing to help. The milk seeps across my desk, a white tide threatening to destroy everything in its path. The manila envelope is already darkening with moisture, the red, confidential stamps beginning to bleed. Mrs. Thompson, I'm so sorry, Sarah repeats, frantically trying to contain the spill with kitchen towels. We need to get the papers out, I say, my fingers working quickly to break the envelope's seal. The paper is already growing soft, and I know if I don't act fast, whatever's inside will be ruined. David would be furious if I let important business documents get destroyed. My hands work quickly, carefully peeling apart the wet pages and laying them across any dry surface we can find. The industrial steel prep table becomes a makeshift document drying station. That's when the words start to register. Agreement made this 15th day of April between Thompson's Catering, hereinafter Cellar, and Horizon Foods Corporation. My heart stutters as I continue reading. Execution of intelligible property. Right. Complete and irrevocable transfer of all recipe rights, including but not limited to the proprietary chocolate cake recipe known as Thompson's Legacy Cake. The next page slightly crumpled from my suddenly trembling hands. Said Transparent's owner, Mr. Cellar, agrees to relinquish all rights to commercial use of said recipes. And then the words that make my knees buckle. Exclusive contracts from Group Horizon Foods Corporation shall maintain sole rights to produce, distribute, and profit from all Thompson family recipes. The milk continues to drip onto the floor, each drop echoing like a metronome counting down to the end of everything I've built, everything my grandmother entrusted to me. Mrs. Thompson, Sarah's voice seems to come from underwater. These papers, they're about our recipes? I can only nod, my eyes fixed on David's signature at the bottom of the contract. The ink is still crisp, untouched by the milk, unlike my heart, which feels like it's dissolving like wet paper. My hands tremble as I read further. Contract terms. Legal language transferring all rights to Thompson family recipes, my grandmother's recipes, to Horizon Foods Corporation. A non-compete clause preventing any commercial use of the recipes by me, and there on the final page, David's signature. Already signed, already dated. Next to a number with so many zeros it makes me dizzy. A separate letter outlines his new position, Vice President of Product Development, Horizon Foods Corporation, starting next month. Mrs. Thompson? Sarah's voice seems to come from very far away. Are you all right? I sink into my chair, the wet papers shaking in my hands. A product development timeline falls into my lap. Thompson's Classic Cakes supermarket launch schedule. They're planning to mass-produce Grandma Rose's recipes, turn them into frozen desserts, shelf-stable mixes. My phone buzzes. David, in meetings all day, don't wait up. Meetings, at Horizon Foods, no doubt. Planning how to turn my grandmother's legacy into a supermarket commodity. Another paper slips from the pile, meeting notes in David's familiar handwriting, dated 3 months ago. My hands shake as I read his meticulous plans, each word a fresh betrayal. Recipe documentation timeline. Week 1, 2, extract exact measurements for base recipes. Week 3, 4, document preparation techniques. Week 5, confirm all ingredient brands/sources. The room spins as memories assault me. David in our kitchen last month, arms wrapped around my waist, watching me bake. Show me again, honey. I love watching you work. His kiss on my temple as I measured ingredients. You make it look like magic. 15 years of marriage collapse into this moment. Every shared dream, every late night planning our future, every proud smile as we built this business together, all of it a lie. While I was trusting him with my grandmother's legacy, he was cataloging it for sale. My stomach heaves. Excuse me, I barely whisper to Sarah before running to the bathroom. I make it just in time, retching up my morning coffee as my world crumbles around me. In the mirror, my reflection looks foreign. Is this what betrayal does to a face? Makes it belonged to a stranger? The woman staring back at me has been fooled for months, maybe years. How long has he been planning this? How many nights did he lie beside me, knowing he would destroy everything I've built? Grandma Rose's voice echoes in my head, clear as the day she passed me her recipe book. Promise me you'll keep our secrets in the family. I am sorry, Grandma, I whisper, splashing cold water on my face. I thought he was family. Back in the kitchen, Sarah has gathered the wet papers into neat piles. She pretends not to notice my red eyes, my shaking hands. The contract still sits there, David's signature bold and unrepentant, next to a number that apparently equals the worth of my trust. A memory surfaces. Grandma Rose in her kitchen, teaching me the final, crucial step of her chocolate cake. This, she'd said, holding up the secret ingredient. You never share, not with anyone, not even your husband when you find him. Some things stay with the blood. I'd thought she was being old-fashioned. Now I recognize it for what it was. Wisdom. Wisdom I took to heart. I wonder if one day she knew this would happen to me, and this was her way of protecting me. My fingers trace the contract's edges, now wrinkled from the milk. David thinks he's bought my grandmother's legacy, but all he's bought is an incomplete puzzle. A story missing its most important chapter because what he doesn't know, even when he watched me bake over my shoulder, was the one ingredient I always kept to myself. I stand up, smoothing my apron with steadier hands. Sarah, could you help me gather these papers? And then we have cakes to bake. Of course, she says, watching me carefully. Her eyes are full of concern and something else, anger on my behalf. Are you okay, Mrs. Thompson? I look up at Grandma Rose's picture on the wall. For 15 years, it's watched over my kitchen, over my marriage, over my naive trust. But now her smile seems different. Not sad, not disappointed, but knowing. As if she'd seen this coming, had prepared me for it all along. I will be, I say, reaching for my mixing bowls. The weight of them in my hands feels like armor, like weapons, like tools of resurrection. I most certainly will be. Because David might have bought my recipes, but he doesn't own my legacy. And he's about to learn what happens when you betray a woman who keeps her most important secrets to herself. The house is dark when I hear his key in the lock. I'm sitting at our kitchen table, the same table where we used to plan menus, dream about our future, share midnight snacks after long catering events. The contract and meeting notes are spread before me, no longer wet, but wrinkled from their morning milk bath. Claire, David calls out, why are you sitting in the dark? I don't answer. Just wait as he follows the thin line of light from the range hood to find me. His silhouette in the doorway is so familiar it hurts. The man I've loved for 15 years. The man I thought I knew. When were you going to tell me? My voice sounds strange, hollow. Before or after they started mass-producing my grandmother's recipes? He stills, seeing the papers on the table. For a moment, something like guilt crosses his face. Then his features harden into something I've never seen before. You weren't supposed to find out this way, he says, loosening his tie. I had a whole presentation planned to help you understand the opportunity. Opportunity? The word tastes bitter. You sold my family's legacy without my knowledge. You've been planning it for months, asking me questions, taking notes. Was any of it real? Any of it at all? Of course it was real. He sits across from me, and for a moment he looks like my David again. But things change, Claire. People change. I can't spend the rest of my life in that kitchen watching you bake the same cakes over and over. The kitchen built our life, my voice cracks. Those recipes paid for this house, for your suits, for everything we have. Those recipes kept us small. He slams his hand on the table, making me jump. Do you know what Horizon is paying me? What they're offering for mass production? This is evolution, Claire. This is business. This is betrayal, I whisper. This is my grandmother's legacy. Your grandmother is dead. His words cut through the dark kitchen like knives. And I'm tired of living in the shadow of her recipes, of your precious family tradition, of playing the supportive husband while you treat every cake like it's some sacred trust. Tears blur my vision. You used to love that about me. His laugh is cruel, unfamiliar. I used to love a lot of things about you. But people change, Claire. I've changed. I want more than what your little kitchen can offer. You mean you want more than me? He doesn't deny it, just looks at me with something close to pity. The contracts are signed. The deal is done. You can either get on board and consult for Horizon, or what? I ask, though I already know the answer. Or you can stay here with your memories and your tradition while the world moves on without you. He stands, straightening his jacket. I'm staying at the Marriott. My lawyers will be in touch about the divorce. 15 years, I whisper to his retreating back. 15 years, David. He pauses in the doorway. 15 years of standing still. I'm ready to move forward. The front door closes behind him with a quiet click. In the dark kitchen, my kitchen, where I taught him my grandmother's recipes, where I trusted him with my heart, I finally let myself break. The sobs come from somewhere deep, somewhere primal. Each one feels like it's tearing something loose inside me. All those moments I thought were love. His proud smile at our first big contract, his arms around me in the kitchen, his midnight tastings of new recipes, were they all just research, just steps toward this betrayal? You were right, Grandma. I whisper into the dark kitchen. Some secrets aren't meant to be shared, even with family. Especially with family. The first month after David left passes in a blur of tears and flour. I work myself to exhaustion, coming in before dawn, leaving long after dark. The physical labor of baking becomes my therapy, kneading dough until my arms ache, until I'm too tired to remember how he betrayed me. But somewhere in the second month something shifts. Memories surface, not of the betrayal but of all the little moments leading up to it. Like sediment settling in clear water, I begin to see patterns I was too close to notice before. Honey, maybe stick to the classic recipes. People don't want fancy flavors. The kitchen's fine as it is. Why waste money on new equipment? You don't need to take that pastry course in Paris. Everything you need to know is right here. Each memory comes with a new perspective, like old photographs suddenly in focus. His protective comments about my ideas being too risky, his practical suggestions to keep things simple, his supportive reminders not to get too ambitious. The kitchen opens earlier now. Dawn finds me already at work, my hands moving through familiar motions that somehow feel new. Without David's constant critiques, "We can't raise prices, Claire," or "Don't experiment too much, stick to what sells," I'm rediscovering my own rhythm. I remember suggesting chocolate lavender macarons for our spring menu. "Too complicated," he'd said. "Stick to what you know." Now I realize he wasn't protecting me from failure. He was keeping me small, manageable, dependent. The divorce papers arrived yesterday morning, clean, clinical pages outlining the end of 15 years. I expected to fall apart again, but something strange happened instead. As I read through the terms, all I could think about were the opportunities ahead. I signed them over my morning coffee, my new signature flowing stronger than the old one. No tears, no hesitation. Just the scratch of pen on paper and the taste of freedom. Last week I found an old notebook filled with recipe ideas I'd shelved because David said they were too ambitious. Reading through it was like meeting my younger self, full of creativity and dreams he'd slowly smothered with practical concerns and business sense. "You seem different," Sarah says one morning, watching me pipe delicate chocolate flowers onto a wedding cake. "Lighter, somehow." She's right. With each passing day, I feel layers of self-doubt falling away like old fondant. I catch myself humming as I work, experimenting with flavors, taking risks I would have never dared under David's guidance. "Remember that time you wanted to offer holiday baking classes?" Sarah asks, carefully arranging macarons, yes, chocolate lavender, in the display case. "And David said it would be too much liability?" I do remember. Just like I remember every other dream he dismissed, every idea he shot down, every ambition he carefully redirected into safer channels. The woman I was then seems like a stranger now, so eager to please, so willing to believe that his limitations were for my own good. She didn't realize that while she was measuring ingredients with precise care, her husband was slowly measuring out her dreams in smaller and smaller portions. But that woman is gone now, dissolved like sugar in hot water, transformed into something stronger, clearer, more refined. Like the perfect temper on chocolate, sometimes you need heat and trauma to emerge stronger and more resilient. The kitchen timer chimes, and I move to check my latest creation, an experimental recipe that David would have never approved of. The scent of success rises with the steam as I open the oven door. My grandmother's chocolate cake is still our signature, but it's no longer our prison. I've developed 5 new variations, each one better than the last. Without David's voice in my ear telling me to keep it simple, I'm finally pushing boundaries I didn't even know existed. The business is thriving. Funny how removing dead weight makes everything rise better, cakes and spirits alike. "Remember how he always said we couldn't afford new equipment?" Sarah asks as we unpack the new industrial mixer. And now look, profits are up 30%. I hadn't realized how much he'd held me back until he was gone. How many ideas I'd shelved because he said they were too risky. How many opportunities I'd missed because he insisted we should stay in our lane. My lane, it turns out, is more of a highway. The kitchen staff has doubled. We've added cooking classes on weekends. Another idea David shot down years ago. They sell out months in advance. Turns out people don't just want to eat magic, they want to learn how to create it themselves. I catch my reflection in the steel refrigerator door, cheeks flushed with effort and excitement. Flour in my hair, a smile I hardly recognize. When did I start looking so alive? A scuffle behind me has me turning around to see David pushing past Sarah. The piping bag trembles slightly in my hands as his cologne reaches me before he does. That expensive scent I used to love, now cloying and desperate like its wearer. He pushes past Sarah, and my stomach clenches at the sight of him. His Armani suit, usually crisp, hangs wrinkled from his frame. His hair, perfectly coiffed 3 months ago when he walked out, sticks up where he's run his hands through it. Dark circles shadow his eyes. "Claire," he says softly, using that velvet voice that used to make my knees weak. "Baby, I've made a terrible mistake." I focus on the wedding cake before me, on the steady pressure needed to create each delicate chocolate petal. My hands are steadier than my heart, muscle memory taking over where emotion fails. The familiar motions anchor me as his presence fills the small office. "I miss you." He steps closer, and I catch a whiff of scotch under the cologne. "The house is empty without you. Nothing feels right anymore." His voice cracks on the last word, and despite myself, my hands falter for just a moment on the delicate chocolate petal I'm creating. "I was wrong, Claire. So wrong." Another step closer. I can see his reflection in the steel prep table, see how he's positioning himself, calculating his approach like he used to do with difficult clients. I wake up reaching for you, the kitchen, our kitchen. It's so quiet without you there. The chocolate flower takes shape under my hands, each petal a small act of defiance. 3 months ago, these words would have shattered me. I would have melted into his arms, grateful for any scrap of affection he deigned to offer. But now I hear what lies beneath them. The desperation, the calculation, the sound of a man whose plans are unraveling. "I've been sleeping in the guest room," he continues, his voice soft and pleading. Can't sleep in our bed without you. Remember how we used to stay up late, you telling me about new recipes you wanted to try? His hand reaches out, hovers near my shoulder but doesn't quite touch. Remember how we used to taste test everything together? My stomach turns at the memory, all those late nights when I thought he was supporting my passion, when he was really just gathering intelligence for his betrayal. Each remembered moment now tainted with the bitter taste of manipulation. Please, baby. He's so close now I can feel his breath on my neck. We can fix this. I'll call Horizon tomorrow, tell them it was all a mistake. We'll go back to how things were. Just us, our kitchen, our life together. The piping bag is steady in my hands as I complete another perfect flower. My grandmother taught me this technique when I was 12, showing me how to keep my hands stable no matter what was happening around me. A steady hand makes steady art, she'd say. Now I understand she was teaching me more than just cake decoration. You're not even listening to me, he says, frustration creeping into his voice. Claire, look at me. Please. I do. I turn and really look at him. His eyes are red-rimmed. His 5 o'clock shadow darker than he'd ever allow in his corporate life. The polished executive reduced to this. A desperate man in a rumpled suit, begging for what he threw away. But beneath the dishevelment, beneath the practiced sincerity in his eyes, I see something else. The slight calculation in his gaze as it flicks to my hands working with the chocolate. The way he's positioned himself to see my technique. Even now, even as he begs, he's still trying to steal my secrets. The house isn't the only thing empty, is it, David? I say quietly. The test batches aren't working. Horizon's investment is failing. That's what's really keeping you up at night. His face changes so quickly it's almost beautiful to watch, like food coloring dropped in clear water, the way it spreads and transforms everything it touches. The mask of contrition dissolves, revealing the truth. His mask slips, revealing the stranger beneath, or maybe showing me the person he always was. His eyes harden, jaw tightens. This is the real David, the one I was too in love to see before. You knew, didn't you? His voice turned sharp, accusatory. You knew the recipes wouldn't work. You deliberately kept something from me. A laugh bubbles up in my throat, surprising us both. He takes a step back, and I realize he doesn't recognize this new version of me. This woman who stands straight, who meets his eyes without flinching, who doesn't desperately seek his approval. Did you come here to win me back, David? Or did you come for the secret ingredient? His hand reaches for mine across the steel prep table. I step back, letting his fingers grasp empty air. Claire, we can fix this. All of it. Just tell me what's missing. The mixer's whir fills the silence as I look at him, really look at him. At the man I gave 15 years to. At the stranger wearing my husband's face. There it is. My voice comes out steady, surprising me. The real reason you're here. It's not about missing me at all, is it? Horizons breathing down your neck, aren't they? The test batches are failing. The recipes don't work. He runs his hands through his hair again, leaving it wild. A bead of sweat trails down his temple despite the kitchen's air conditioning. You owe me this, Claire. After 15 years, I owe you. The words taste bitter, like burned sugar. You sold my grandmother's legacy behind my back. You betrayed everything we built together, and now you think I owe you. His desperation turns to anger, like ingredients curdling in heat. Everything I did for us. This could have made us millions. Still can if you'd just... For us? My laugh sounds foreign to my own ears. You mean for you? The executive position, the corner office, the company car. Tell me, David, in all your plans for us, where exactly did I fit in? He steps forward, hands spread in supplication. They're going to sue me, Claire. I'll lose everything. The house, the savings. You mean my house? I pipe another flower, perfect and precise, the one bought with money from my recipes, the savings you built from my grandmother's legacy while paying me less than our prep cooks? Please, his voice cracks. They're talking about fraud charges, criminal charges. I could go to jail. How interesting. I set down my piping bag, turned to face him fully. That's exactly what you said would happen to me if I ever shared these recipes with anyone else. The contracts protect us, you said. Funny how those same contracts are destroying you now. Sweat darkens the collar of his expensive shirt. I was wrong, okay? Is that what you want to hear? I made a mistake. A mistake? The rage I've kept contained these past months rises like bread in heat. A mistake is oversleeping, David. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. What you did was calculated betrayal. You watched me work for 15 years, planning every moment to steal what was never yours to take. I'm begging you. Yes, I cut him off. You are. And I want you to remember this moment, David. Remember how it feels to beg. Remember what it's like to watch everything you built crumble because of your own greed. Because this, I gesture to his disheveled state, his desperate eyes. This is exactly what you deserve. His face contorts. You vindictive bitch. There he is. I smile, and he takes a step back. There's the real David, not the loving husband, not the penitent sinner, just a thief who got caught. I'll lose everything, he whispers. Like I lost everything? My trust? My marriage? My grandmother's legacy? Each question lands like a blow. The difference is, I built something better from those ashes. You? I turn back to my cake. You're just going to burn. Erection, publicly. Get out of my kitchen, David, get out of my life. And remember, every time you see our name on a wedding cake, every time you hear about our success, that you did this to yourself. Your greed, your betrayal, your choices, they're all coming home to roost. He stands there, mouth working soundlessly, the powerful executive reduced to nothing but a man who bet everything on a recipe he didn't fully possess. Sarah, I call, not taking my eyes off my work, please escort Mr. Thompson out, and this time, make sure he understands he's not welcome back. His footsteps retreat, each one lighter than the last, as if his very presence is diminishing. At the door, he stops. I really did love you once, he says quietly. No, I reply, adding the final flower to my cascade. You loved what you could take from me. There's a difference. The door closes behind him with a final click. In its echo, I hear the sound of justice, of karma, of a man reaping exactly what he sowed. And it tastes sweeter than any cake I've ever baked. The headline in Food and Wine makes me smile over my morning coffee. Horizon Foods pulls Thompson Classic line amid recipe scandal. Sarah drops the Wall Street Journal on my desk. David's face, no longer polished and confident, stares up from the business section. Horizon Foods sues former VP for fraudulent recipe acquisition. Damages sought in excess of $10 million. And they're saying the product tests were a disaster, Sarah says, perching on the edge of my desk. The cake mix turned out like rubber, the frosting separated, nothing worked. I continue piping delicate chocolate flowers onto my latest creation, a 7-tier masterpiece for the governor's daughter's wedding, the kind of high-profile client that used to make David salivate. 3 major retailers have pulled the products, Sarah continues, scrolling through her phone. Horizon stock dropped 15% when the news broke. They're saying David knew the recipes were incomplete when he sold them. The corporate machine David so desperately wanted to join is now crushing him beneath its wheels. Poetic justice has a particular sweetness to it. My phone buzzes. Another text from David's lawyer, begging for a meeting. Apparently, Horizon's legal team is as ruthless as their business practices. They're not just suing for damages, they want blood. Did you see? Sarah holds up her tablet. They fired him, effective immediately, and they're clawing back his signing bonus. The industry newsletters are particularly brutal. Former VP David Thompson accused of recipe fraud. Thompson scandal rocks food industry. Major corporations distance themselves from disgraced executive. Meanwhile, our kitchen hums with activity. 3 new wholesale contracts signed this week, a cookbook deal in the works. The cooking school's waiting list is 6 months long. Mrs. Thompson? One of our new apprentices pokes her head in. The Times reporter is here for the interview about female entrepreneurs in the food industry. I check my reflection in the steel prep table, flour in my hair, chocolate on my apron, success in my smile. Perfect. The Food Network called again, Sarah adds. They want you to judge their new baking competition show. Tell them yes, I say, adding the final flour to my cascade. But make sure they know I'll need to work around our teaching schedule. The scholarship program for aspiring female chefs takes priority. Sarah grins. Remember how David said teaching would be a waste of time? I do remember. Just like I remember every other opportunity he tried to squash, every dream he attempted to contain. Now those dreams are blooming, like the chocolate flowers cascading down my cakes. My phone buzzes again, a news alert this time. Former food executive David Thompson blacklisted by major industry players. The article mentions how no reputable food company will touch him, how his reputation for fraud has made him unemployable in the industry. Karma's a batch, Sarah quips, deliberately mispronouncing the word. I laugh, surveying my kitchen. My empire, really. The new wing is under construction, expanding our teaching facilities. The Scholarship Foundation is thriving. Our reputation for excellence grows daily. And somewhere across town, in a corporate boardroom, David is learning the true cost of betrayal. His corner office now empty, his corporate card cancelled, his reputation in ruins. Everything he tried to steal from me has slipped through his fingers like sugar through a sieve. Mrs. Thompson? Another staff member appears. The James Beard Foundation is on line 1. I smile, thinking of David's face when he sees the announcement of my nomination. Some recipes, it turns out, can't be stolen. Some success can't be fraudulently acquired. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply rising higher than your betrayer ever dreamed possible. And I'm still rising.
Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed the story, hit subscribe so you never miss a new tale. Your support means the world. See you in the next chapter.